Hi Year 13, the aim of today's lesson is just for me to talk you through how you're going to structure your response. Remember, I'm not going to give you your big ideas. You've already planned your exam responses, and those of you who have submitted those to me will have received feedback for them. So you should feel fairly confident in what you're writing in your essay. I'm just going to help you to structure it today. So at various points during today's lesson, you're going to need to pause the video and write some of your exam response, remembering that our key theme that we're looking at is the theme of insecurity in both of the texts. Before you begin to write, I just want to remind you of the assessment objectives, the AOs, that we keep referring to and keep in our mind as we write an exam response. AO1 is developing your argument, responding to the big ideas in the text and thinking about what the writers wanted to communicate, what they wanted their readers to think about. AO2, and that's our class focus, is your analysis of writers' methods, how they use language, structure and form, their word choices, their structural choices to shape the meaning in their text. AO3, understanding how the text has been shaped by context. That's a really important one because the text is called Modern Times. So they want you to think about how the modern world has shaped the writing. AO4, drawing comparisons between the two texts. That one is as simple as using comparative statements. For example, both writers, or similarly, in contrast, etc. And then AO5 are critical quotes and critical interpretations, which you should have prepared in your plan. A reminder again of the exam question. You might want to pause the video and write it down. It's in modern literature, insecurity is shown to be a condition that profoundly affects the lives of ordinary people. Compare the significance of insecurity in two other texts you have studied. Remember to include in your answer reference to how meanings are shaped in the texts you are comparing, and that's worth 25 marks. So if you'd like to write that down, you can pause the video now and write down your essay title at the top so that it makes lots of sense when you come back to revise. Okay, so we will start as always by writing our introduction, and we're going to use the GST model of an introduction that we have practiced relentlessly in our lessons. So we're all really clear on this now, but just as a reminder, it stands for Statement about the Theme and Modern Times. Specific, introduce the context. A nice sentence to do that would be written just 20 years apart, because you're showing that they were both written in a similar time, but the contexts of those times are vastly different. Or you could write written during a time in which, as we've practiced before as well. And then our thesis statement we wrote together last week. It would therefore be easy to argue, and that would always be our sentence stem because it helps us to write a thesis that is a thesis and will outline our argument. It would therefore be easy to argue that writers explore the way that challenges presented by the modern world result in insecurities that manifest in their characterization, remembering that we're thinking about the characters as literary constructs and not as real people. So spend 5 minutes now, no more than 5 minutes, and I do want you to time yourself, writing your introduction. Off you go. Okay, so now hopefully we've got a nice GST introduction, ready to move on to our wider points. So you're going to make 3 big points to develop your argument. You'll already have planned those 3 big points in last lesson, and you're going to develop each of your points, ensuring that you cover all of the assessment objectives. Your paragraphs might look like this. So this is just a rough structure. You don't have to follow this because I want your work to be quite organic and you to develop your work in a way that you feel happy with. But if you prefer to have the structure, here is how you can potentially structure your points. So you could make the big point that you're going to make that you've already planned. Make point 1 first. Find evidence from Top Girls. Analyse the language or structural choices in the parts of the text that you've made reference to. Then relate your text and your quotation choice to the context. So how did context shape this text? What was going on at the time or in the writer's life even that has led to them writing in this way? And then AO4, make a comparative statement. See that as your glue to bind together your ideas about Churchill and then Duffy. Something like similarly, Duffy explores, or in contrast, because it's okay to draw contrasting points between them as well. Okay, then you start the process again, but focused on Duffy. What's the big idea in Duffy's poetry? provide evidence and analyse your quotation in terms of structure and language. Remember to do as much as you possibly can with each quotation. Relate it back to the context and how that shaped the text. And then I would like you to offer a critical analysis, meaning a feminist reading, a structuralist reading, a psychoanalytical reading, or include critical quotes to show wider reading around the subject. And then if you see each paragraph as a bit of a sandwich, at the end, so AO1 is your bread. You start with AO1, you end with AO1 in each paragraph. Link back to the big idea that you were trying to prove, okay? And have a therefore both writers or clearly both writers, however you'd like to write it. So that's a structure you could use if you would like to ensure coverage of all of the assessment objectives and have more of a structure to work with. So at this point, I would like you to pause the video and write the bulk of your essay now. Write your 3 big points, well developed. Spend about 30 minutes on that, so it's a long one, but pause the video here. After you replay the video, I'll give you some guidance on your conclusion. Off you go. Okay, wonderful. So you have written the main part of your essay now. All that's left to do is a conclusion that's going to refer back to your thesis and prove that you have developed your argument. So this is where you get lots of AO1 marks. You start with an overall, both writers, and you summarise the big ideas. Then you're going to read again the thesis statement about how the modern world creates insecurities. And you're going to do a therefore. So your conclusion will always be overall, therefore. Okay, so that shouldn't take you any more than a couple of minutes. That's just a quick thing to pop on the end to prove that you have developed your line of argument well. Remember to submit your essays and I will give you feedback, hopefully as soon as I can, maybe in time for our live lesson, so that I can talk to you about how we can move forward with our essay writing. Okay, well done.